Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today we are finally going to be reviewing the books that I read in December. I'm not going to faff around, I'm going to get straight into the reading. I read more books in December than I did in any other month of 2022. Admittedly, quite a lot of them were pretty short. But yeah, as I said, no faffing around, I'm going to get straight in and I'm going to start with the adult fiction. I read Fling by Joseph Murray. So this is a contemporary kind of rom-com book that comes out in February. This is a proof copy, so thank you very much Book Break for sending me this one to review. I really enjoyed it. So the premise of this book is so fun. It is about a married couple who are going through a pretty difficult time. They've had a few failed rounds of IVF and that's putting a huge strain on their relationship. They don't feel like they're getting on as much as they used to. They're arguing a lot. They both feel like they don't really want to be in this relationship anymore. While that is happening, a dating app is rising to prominence in Ireland called Fling. And this book is set in Ireland, so if you are looking for some recommendations for the Irish Readathon, this would be a great pick. So yeah, this dating app is rising to prominence and the purpose of this app is so that married couples can cheat in their relationship. Both parties in this relationship, Tara and Colin, decide to sign up to Fling, and on the app they end up connecting with their perfect match. But everything on this app is made anonymous because it's an app to do with infidelity. There's no photos of people's faces. They use fake names and fake ages to protect their identity. It will come as no surprise that in fact the secret aliases that Tara and Colin end up embodying, Claire and Jack, they end up connecting. So you have this married couple who feel like they're about to cheat on their partner, but turns out the person that they're trying to cheat on them with is their partner. I love that concept. That concept is so much fun. I didn't think this book was perfect. I thought at some points the writing was just a little bit cheesy. It didn't always feel entirely authentic, but I still thought this book was a lot of fun. And I also thought the kind of side characters, so Colin and Tara's friends, were really entertaining parts of this book as well. So yeah, if you're looking for a fun rom-com read, I would recommend this one. While we're on the rom-coms, let's stick with it. I read Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. Earlier in 2022, I read The X Talk by the same author and I absolutely loved that book. I didn't enjoy Weather Girl quite as much, but I still thought it was so much fun. So in this book, we are mainly following Ari, who is a meteorologist at a TV station, and her life has become very difficult with her boss and like her boss's own complicated personal professional life. She is really busy fighting with her ex, who is the news director at the TV station, and that's just really negatively impacting Ari's professional life. It is then that Ari connects with the slightly shy sports correspondent Russell, and they hatch a plan to get their bosses back together. But of course it will come at no surprise that actually Ari and Russell end up developing feelings for each other. I thought this felt a lot more authentic than the other rom-com that I just spoken about. I think the characters felt really honest, they felt true to life. I thought it was really fantastic to have a lead male character that self-identifies as fat. I don't think that's something that you see in a lot of rom-coms, be it on the page or on the screen. And I also really appreciated seeing the depiction of a man trying to date as a father and how he balances that sort of thing. I read this in one sitting, absolutely flew through it, really recommend. I also read Maureen Fry and the Angel of the North by Rachel Joyce. This is a proof copy, but the finished book is out now. This is kind of a companion novella to a book that I read many years ago called The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, and another book that is connected to that story called The Love Song of Miss Queenie Hennessy. The Harold Fry book follows the journey of an older man who is told that one of his friends from many years ago is very unwell, and he decides to take on this kind of pilgrimage, essentially walking the length of the country in order to reconnect with his old friend. This novella follows his wife a few years later going on her own pilgrimage, and it fleshes out her perspective on a key aspect of their story that we would know from the other books. I don't think it's essential that you've read those books to read this novella, but I would recommend it. I think it fleshes it out a lot more and chronologically just kind of makes sense. I didn't enjoy this as much as I did The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry. I found the main character in this, Maureen, very irritating, and I definitely don't think you need to like all of the characters in a book to like a book, but there were just a lot of things about her that I found very jarring. I found her a difficult character to spend time with. I thought some of the dialogue around kind of how the modern world is changing and how that can often make older people feel left behind was a really valid and important discussion point of this book. And I do think it was fantastically written, as has been the experience with all of the Rachel Joyce books I've read. I just don't think this one was particularly for me. So this next one, I'm the last person on the bookish internet to have read this book. In December, I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book was recommended to me so many years ago by so many different people, and obviously it's had this massive like TikTok resurgence. But I think when this was recommended to me so many years ago, it was recommended so strongly that it made me like nervous to read the book, and I was like so confident that I was absolutely gonna love it. And I was just like, what if I just don't like completely love it? It felt like a lot of pressure to put on the book. And then the minute I picked it up, I was like a few chapters in and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be a 5-star book. I understand what the hype is all about. I feel like I don't really need to talk about this one too much. I feel like most people watching this video have probably already read this book, so I'm not going to delve into the plot. I feel like everyone already knows. I'm just going to talk about like how I reacted to this book, which was just like obsessively reading it. I could not put it down. I thought it was fascinating. I loved the engagement with sexuality in this book. It was something that I really like valued and appreciated, and I loved just kind of the glitz and the glam of the era that it was set in. I think Evelyn is just such a compelling character. I really loved spending time with her, and also the host of, you know, other characters that we meet as she tells us her story. I'm also endlessly impressed with Taylor Jenkins Reid's ability to balance a dual narrative. So the way this is written is her, you know, having conversations with the journalist who is recording her life, and we are in that moment as she's relaying that story and hearing about the dialogue between those two, but also we're kind of delving into the stories that she's retelling. And I think how the author managed to balance both of those narratives simultaneously is just so impressive, and it's something I've been really impressed with in a number of her novels. Unsurprisingly, big fan. 5 stars. I also read some poetry in December. I read Dearly by Margaret Atwood. Margaret Atwood, probably better known for being a fiction writer, most famously of The Handmaid's Tale. I was really intrigued to read some poems from her, but unfortunately I didn't really find any of these that striking or indeed memorable. It's a real shame. Maybe these just weren't for me, but I honestly just don't really have that much of note to say about these poems. Let me know if you've read this one and you got more out of it than I did. Maybe I just wasn't reading it kind of actively or presently enough. But yeah, this is one that I was pretty disappointed in. Let's talk about some non-fiction now. I read Women and Power by Mary Beard. This is an adaptation of a speech that Mary Beard did a fair few years ago now, I think in 2017. Mary Beard is a very accomplished and celebrated classicist. She's very knowledgeable and a total expert in her field, and this was a speech that she gave about exactly as it is entitled, Women and Power. So power structures throughout history, how women have been excluded from those power structures, considering our cultural perception around women and power, and how women can engage with power differently and don't need to fit the male mode of power. I think Mary Beard does a fantastic job of looking at these really quite complex and nuanced topics, but presenting them in a really digestible way, also with a lot of wit and humour, which is really appreciated when dealing with quite a complex topic. I really liked what she was saying about how we shouldn't be simply striving for women to fit into the power structures that were created by men, but rather dismantling and rebuilding the structure itself. I really liked how she took examples from antiquity and history, but also modern examples. And yeah, if you are interested in gender, power dynamics, feminism, any of those kinds of things, then I think this is definitely worth picking up. I also read Jog On by Bella Mackie. Bella Mackie's probably better known now for her fiction, How to Kill Your Family, but before she wrote that, she wrote this non-fiction book about exercise and running. I couldn't help but compare this to Eat, Sweat, Play by Anna Kessel, which is possibly one of my favourite non-fiction books of all time, and certainly one of my favourite non-fiction books about sport. And I didn't enjoy Jog On as much as I did that book, although they are very different books, so perhaps it's unfair to compare them. This is much more of a personal story about Bella's experiences with exercise, how it impacted her personal life, her development, her growth, her recovering from certain certain things, difficult things that happened in her life, and how she channeled energy into running. The title of this book not only represents the literal, you know, going for a jog, going for a run, but also getting on with life, just kind of picking yourself up and jogging on. I really appreciated how open and honest the author was about her experiences and struggles with mental health, with alcohol, with addiction. And I do think if you are someone who's looking to get into exercise or running, this could be something that is really motivational. And to be honest, I'm not good at running. Like I consider myself pretty fit, but running is it's not my favorite. And it is something that I would like to pick up more this year. So it definitely worked motivating me in that respect. In December, I also read all 4 volumes of Heartstopper. I had a really cozy reading experience with these books where I just sat down with some snacks, with a cup of tea, got all cozy, had a little ASMR room on in the background, and just really enjoyed them. I'm gonna stop holding them all up because they're heavy and just hold the first one. Like Evelyn Hugo, I don't really feel like I need to tell you loads about these books. I feel like I'm, again, the last person on the internet to have read them. But these are beautiful graphic novels by Alice Oseman that follow the budding romantic relationship between Nick and Charlie, who are 2 boys at secondary school. And it's boy meets boy, boys become friends, boys fall in love. And I just loved how tender and cute and honest and wholesome their relationship was. Not just their relationship, but all the kind of supporting characters. I really loved being in this world. Their story is just so compelling, so readable, beautifully paced, and also handles some really difficult topics in a very sensitive way as well. So cute, absolutely loved them. I also read The Silver Chain by Jian Shabani. This is a YA book that is written in verse, which is something that I really love. I think YA in particular really lends itself to that format of storytelling, and I think this was done so beautifully. Our main character in this book also has a huge love for music. She's a violinist, and I think that depiction of music went hand in hand with the verse form so perfectly. This is the story of a 16-year-old struggling to fit in. It's a topic that is always going to be relevant for this age group, something that can happen for so many different reasons. And in the case of our main character in The Silver Chain, she is on a music scholarship at a very expensive private school, and she doesn't always feel like she fits in with the people around her. Not only is there that, but she has a very complicated family life. Her parents emigrated to the UK, which was not a straightforward, simple transition. It was something that came with a lot of difficulties, particularly for the mother in this family, who suffers really rather badly with her mental health. And a lot of this book is about that very difficult relationship there, how her mother isn't really able to care for her in the way that she might like to, and how difficult it can be to be the child in that situation. I thought it was done really sensitively with a lot of nuance, and I thought the way the author handled numerous very difficult subject matters was done very well. In December, I also read Pet and Bitter by Akweke Emeze. I don't have a physical copy of Pet. I listened to it on audiobook and then picked up the physical copy of Bitter. I'll talk about Pet first because it is the book that came out first, and this is a prequel to that book. So in Pet, we are following a character named Jam, who lives in this world where there are no monsters in this world anymore. They have grown up in a society that tells them about how monsters have been banished. There are no monsters anymore, until one day a monster called Pet emerges from one of Jam's mother's paintings. And the story that follows is about how we define monsters. What are monsters? Are monsters even a thing? Is how the society has defined monsters correct? Is it just? Pet was such a fun character to spend time with. They are quite volatile, and it feels like at any moment they could kind of kick off and the story would turn in a different perspective, go in a different direction. There's something about that character that kind of keeps you on edge throughout the whole book. And I think the real strength of this book was also the other characters. You know, Jam's parents, I felt like were fully fleshed out, really believable, nuanced parental figures. Jam was also such a determined, tenacious character, and it was really great to see the diversity in that character. Jam is trans, they are black, they mainly communicate through sign language, and I thought that depiction of different experiences, not mainstream experiences, was really valuable. This is certainly more on the literary end of YA to the point where I'm like, is this really for teenagers, or is this a book about teenagers for adults? I think it's probably the latter. And I think I believed that even more strongly when it came to reading Bitter. There are some really heavy topics dealt with in these books, including child abuse. Bitter is Jam's mother, hence this being a prequel, so we are going back to when the mother is a teenager. She's had quite a turbulent upbringing in foster care, and she is now attending this really special kind of prestigious school called Eucalyptus, which is really focused on talents and creativity, and is just such a safe space for the kids that are attending it. And of course we learn more about how the painting that plays such a significant role in Pet comes to be, and we're seeing Bitter come to understand how her paintings come to life. This book also has a lot to do with protest and revolution and the role that art plays in times like that. You know, not every activist has to be out on the streets putting themselves in danger and protesting. This book has a lot to do with the importance of art in political uprisings. I thought the writing in these books was really fantastic. It was really beautiful, and I'm very keen to read an adult novel from this author, because I think these books are slightly awkwardly placed in terms of the age demographic that it's targeting. I would love to read a book that is just fully intended for adults. Very quickly, I'm going to talk about some kids books that I read in December, starting with some non-fiction. I read You Can Do It by Marcus Rashford, which he has co-written with Carl Anka. This is the second non-fiction book from Marcus Rashford, the England and Manchester United footballer who is very much in form right now. Thank you for scoring lots of goals for Man United, Marcus. Much like the first non-fiction book from Marcus and Carl, this is a very motivational book for young people about finding out what they're passionate about, harnessing their talent, using their voice, sticking up for what they believe in, and encouraging children or young people to use their voice for better, to empower themselves and empowering people around them. I think these books are written in an absolutely fantastic way. I love how engaging they are and really encourage active participation from the child reader. I really appreciate how Marcus shares stories from his own personal and professional life. And yeah, if you are looking to empower a young reader in your life, then I would definitely recommend these books. I also read The Good Bear by Sarah Leanne. I read this on Christmas Eve in one sitting. This is a really tender story about a young girl who goes to visit her father in Norway. Not only him, but his new family, and how she is struggling to fit into the dynamic of that family unit. Things just don't really feel right. She doesn't feel settled. She doesn't feel at home. And then one day she makes a discovery deep in the woods. She discovers bear, and the story that follows is so tender, so beautifully and sensitively told, as she tries to prove to everyone that this bear is not a danger, he is not a threat, he is a good bear. This was the perfect thing to read over Christmas, but I also think, you know, it's still so cold out there at the moment. This was still the perfect kind of wintry read if you wanted to pick it up now. The final book I'm going to talk about very quickly because it's a Christmas book. I read The Christmas Carols by Mel Taylor Besant. This is the second book in this kind of Christmas series about the Christmas carols, a family who are obsessed with Christmas all year round. It's a really fun book. I would recommend it to you next Christmas if you're looking for a super cozy read that is going to get you in all those festive Christmassy feels, but it is now the end of January, so I'm not going to be talking about Christmas books at the moment. So that is it. They are all of the books that I read in December, finally wrapped up. If you have thoughts on any of the books I've mentioned, do leave me a comment down below and we can have a chat about them. Have you already read any of these books? Are any of these books on your to be read pile? If you don't have anything in particular to say, but you would like to let me know that you are here, leave me a weather related emoji in honor of Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. That is it for me today. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.